Picture being in a gorgeous forest with some ancient trees, stone steps, and not a soul in sight. This place is about 90 minutes from Tokyo, and most people planning a trip to Japan will never find it. And it's not because it's hard to get to. You probably spent hours planning a Japan trip, watched videos, built spreadsheets, read blogs, and they probably all say something different. Almost everybody planning for their Japan trip is straight up asking the wrong question, when the question should really be, what would make this trip feel worth it to me? In this video, I'm gonna show you exactly how that plays out and how you build a trip that feels like it's uniquely yours when you get back. So a few years back, some friends came with me to Japan for the first time. I know Japan well. I planned everything, logistics, timing, so on and so forth. While I was thinking everything was going well, the husband just in the middle of the trip said, hey man, this isn't landing the way that I thought. And from that one conversation, it completely changed the way I plan Japan trips for people. So with that being said, here's how most people plan their first Japan trip. They go through the gold route. You probably have heard of it, Tokyo, Kyoto, Hakone, so on and so forth. And that's not a bad itinerary. The problem is what happens when you underestimate what it actually costs when you do it. Like, Japan looks really small on the map. The bullet train is fast, but 2 hours on a bullet train doesn't include getting to the station, going somewhere for the first time with luggage, and doing that after a few days when you're already dragging just from the jet lag. That 2 hours you thought it was gonna take probably becomes most of your afternoon. And if you got regional trains or you gotta catch a limited express, if you miss a connection, you could probably be waiting for more than an hour, or just, it can turn into craziness. Most people burn half their day just going between two cities. You have other people who stay in place, which is a good idea, but they try to do too much in one day. They wake up, they go to Tsukiji at 8, Asakusa by 10, Akihabara for lunch, Harajuku in the afternoon, Shibuya in the evening, and so on and so on. But by the middle of the day, like I said before, everybody's gassed and nobody's actually present during any of it. And you didn't really get to enjoy where you were, you just hopped from place to place. So what do you do instead so that you can have a trip that feels both amazing and feels like it's unique to you? I would say do 2 to 3 meaningful things in a day and have some breathing room built in. Some of the best stuff in Japan, I know in my experience, it happens when you're not rushing to the next thing. Like somebody local points you somewhere and you find a place that's not in any video you've seen. You actually get to sit where you are and feel it and feel where you are. That's when it can stop feeling like a checklist and start feeling like the trip that you want to talk about, or the trip that people ask you about when you get home. And this next thing can literally eat up tons of days, not just because you planned it that way, but it's on everybody's list. So before you know it, you got 6 or 7 of them and things go sideways. When you go to Kyoto, what's the first thing you think about? Temples, right? So unless temples are generally your thing, you love the history and architecture of each one, after a while you can start to feel like you've seen them all. And I've told people that for years. I'll talk about what to do instead a little bit later. So what happens while you're temple hopping? What you miss when temple hopping is literally everything else. A sake brewery in Fushimi, the tea fields in Uji. That's the kind of stuff that you can find when you stop just jam-packing your schedule with everything some list you found online says you should see. Legit pick 1 or 2 temples that actually mean something to you and build the rest of the time around what you want to do. I know that sounds crazy, but stuff that you probably would want to do. It's as simple as that. This next thing brings up something most people actually don't think about until they're already losing a chunk of their day. So quick point, I put together a free Japan guide with all things Japan, how to travel, lots of tips and tricks, and the links below. All right, so picture Fushimi Inari. It's the famous temple you've probably seen with the torii gates that go up the mountain, and you know, you've seen it. At 6 a.m., the torii gates catch the light before the crowds get there, and it's quiet enough that you can legit hear your own steps on the stone path. Maybe there's one other person ahead of you, and the whole place feels like it's been there for like 600 years, which it has. That's what it's like at 6 a.m. Now, try to picture the same spot at 10 a.m. on a Saturday. You got columns of people 4 and 5 wide in both directions on the same path, and you're waiting for a gap to get a photo that doesn't just look like some subway platform in New York at rush hour. Same gates, same temple, 4 hours apart, totally different vibe. So how do you experience a place like Fushimi Inari and create the kind of experience that people back home are actually gonna wanna hear about? I hinted at it a little bit earlier. Early is probably the best move, but it's not the only move. A lot of spots in Japan are actually quiet again in the late afternoon, early evening, especially if you go during the middle of the week. Either way, the window that you go definitely matters. For anywhere that actually means something to you, make sure you find the best window to go. The Japan that you probably wanna talk about when you get back and that you're actually looking for is in those windows, not in the middle of the day when you're gonna just be in the middle of everybody's pictures. Okay, so we talked about temples, timing, and how to do too much. Here's another thing that everybody tells you to do that I think is also a pretty big mistake. Everyone will say, you need to see these 10 places in Japan or it's the end of the world. You don't know anybody like that. If that were actually true though, I guess half of the world's population would be gone.
I don't feel so good.
Look, I get it. Like I said, I'm guilty of it. And the lists that everybody talks about are built for everybody. And they give you some of the best of Japan, or things that have been seen as the icons, best of, must-sees of Japan. But here's the thing about most people's top 10 lists. They're made for everybody, which means they're actually not made for anybody specific. Before you watch your 9,000th video or look at your first top 10 list, what should you do to make sure your trip actually feels like one you, emphasis on you, would actually take? Look, I get this was point 4, but legit, if you've not thought about this, pause this video. Before you open or watch another single list, write down what you actually like to do when you travel or at home. Food, music, nature, history, anime, coffee, whatever it is. Pause the video and write that down. Japan has a deep version of almost anything. I'm gonna talk about this a little bit later, but having that in mind and having that in your head clears up a lot of the confusion. And I think once you do that, you're well on your way to planning a trip that'll make you feel like an expert in your friend circle. The next thing that trips people up is assuming they can just figure it out when they get there. Look, the reality of Japan is some things do sell out. Now, it might get busy, but actually gone weeks, months out. I'm talking Team Lab Borderless, Team Lab Planets. I've been to both. I know there's a whole wave of sensory museums and all of that. Like just go outside, touch grass. But places like that have timed entry, and the popular time slots book up way ahead of time. The Ghibli Museum releases tickets on the 10th of each month for the next month, and they're usually gone like in a few minutes. The best omakase places in Tokyo and Kyoto that seat maybe 8 people a night, those are usually booked out months in advance before you even think about looking. So what do you do to make sure you're getting the max value for your, again, emphasis on your Japan trip? I mentioned this a little bit earlier in the video, but this is the one thing that changed the way I approach planning trips. Like I said that way back in the intro, and that's to book the anchor first, or to choose the anchor point of your trip first. This is the one thing that can make or break your trip and make it feel like it's worth it or not. I'll give you an example. If you feel like your Japan trip, again, emphasis on your, will be garbage without going to the remote cafe you spent hours researching, or if you don't get a chance to see a traditional performance, you better include it in your itinerary. Everything else can stay pretty flexible, but that one thing can't wait. So this last point is the sort of thing that, when combined with all the other things that I've told you, can take your Japan trip from one that just everybody does to what you had in mind when you probably decided to go in the first place. Here's the thing. You can nail all of this stuff, and the reality is you might still wonder if you left the best version of your trip on the table. Let me give you some examples. I had a couple on their honeymoon whose thing was jazz. They wanted jazz. Kobe has one of the best jazz scenes in Japan, and a lot of people don't even know that. So I built a day around it. That night meant the world to them. They loved it. There's another couple, they wanted to see a mountain cafe that they'd seen in this Rachel and June video online and couldn't stop thinking about it. I helped them plan it, map it out so they could go up to Tohoku and do it, and they loved it. Then, more recently, I think there's a guy who's either there or on his way back. He wanted to go to Maizuru. Maizuru is a small port city that's like 90 minutes north of Kyoto that no regular person would put on their list. He had done his research and he needed help to figure out how to make it work. At the time I was putting this together, he actually emailed me and said he was having a great time. You know, that's what having someone in your corner actually does. It's just not knowing where to go. It's knowing how to make what you want actually happen. It's like knowing there's a skimming or dipping noodle spot in Kamiyari that'll change how you think about noodles. And again, almost nobody outside of Japan has heard of it. It's knowing which train car to get on so you know to step off right at the exit. It's knowing that the experience you came for is actually possible if somebody who understands the logistics helps you get it done. The kind of knowledge that takes years to build or takes somebody who already has it. So what does this all mean? The people who come back with the stories where somebody goes, wait, where was that? How'd you find that? It's not that they had a better list. They knew what they were looking for before they started. So that off the beaten path temple at the beginning is, again, another example of something you will not find on every list. It's what happens when you let somebody take you on a ride on their moped through the mountains. I may know a guy. So now with all of that said, knowing where to go is one thing. Actually connecting with people when you get there is a totally different ball game. So I put together a video on 7 phrases that basically open every door in Japan. Check that out next.